Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very exciting Stately office hours. I mean, this is pretty much all the office hours we're bringing you lately. They're all exciting. We have so many announcements all the time. That's what we do now. So this is where us, the team at Stately, give you updates on everything that is happening with Stately and with XState. Just briefly before we get into all of the exciting XState stuff, let's quickly introduce who we've got here today. So I'm Laura and I do advocacy and education for Stately. David, who are you?
Hey, I'm David, creator of XState, which was created almost 8 years ago, I believe, and founder of Stately, which is almost 3 years old.
And Nick.
And I'm Nick, and I do product design at Stately.
And last but not least, Kevin.
I'm Kevin. I do engineering at Stately.
So I think it's time for us to finally talk about the fact that XState version 5 is now out, or on the verge of being out, David?
It is on the verge of being out. Yeah, so we we said that it was going to be released in November, and so there were just so many things. We really wanted to get all of the potential breaking changes in before we released it. And actually, I could show you right now. This was the version 5 work in progress branch, and if you could see here, it actually started on December 26, 2019. So that's almost 4 years ago. I can't believe I started this after Christmas. I guess it's like, hey, maybe you'll get this next Christmas. But a lot has happened since then. You could see over 1,000 files changed, and a lot of these are just various change sets. Just so many things changed. I mean, there's a lot of weird change set names. But yeah, needless to say, a ton of hard work from from the team, Matoush especially, who I'm sure is watching right now. A lot of hard work went into this, and we really refocused our priority from XState being a you must use state machines and state charts everywhere to XState being actors are a very, very useful unit of abstraction, and state machines and state charts are just one way in which you could represent logic within an actor. So I just got the go-ahead from Matoush that here's our version packages PR, 177 files changed, and pushing this indistinguishably colored button. I was hoping, oh, there we go. It's nice and red now.
Oh, excellent. That's exciting.
This will release XState V5 so that the latest version of XState is version 5 instead of version 4. So hopefully all goes well. I'm going to confirm this. And here we go. Hopefully nothing blows up.
How many office hours do you get where a new version is merged and released live?
Yeah, right. And this is going to go through CI/CD, so it might take a few minutes, but pretty soon, if you npm install XState, you will get the latest XState version 5. And there are so many exciting things to talk about in this release, and we're going to be making a bigger announcement on Twitter, LinkedIn, and all of the social medias shortly after this. But if you want a preview, I wrote a pretty big blog post over here titled XState V5 is here. And again, there are so many exciting things to talk about. First of all is the vision. In XState version 4, state machines and state charts were the main focus, and now actors are the main focus in XState version 5. So what this means is that you can represent logic the way that you want to. Of course, state machines and state charts are going to be the most flexible, powerful way of doing so, but you don't need to force all of your logic in a state machine in order to take advantage of the actor model and all of the APIs of XState. So you could represent, for example, your actor logic as promises, transition functions, or reducers if you're coming from Zustand, Redux, things like that, Pinia with Vue, etc. There's observable actor logic, and I mean, all of these are actually pretty short. Oops, some tabbing going on here, but we have callback actor logic as well. And you could also create your own custom logic too. And one thing I'm very excited about is these building blocks actually give you the ability to compose actor logic. So let's say that you have some actor logic and you wanted to add logging, or you wanted to add undo redo, or you wanted to persist it to a database automatically. Now that's just a function, because actor logic is just an object with a transition, get initial snapshot, all of those necessary methods. So if you wanted to compose that, just spread the original actor logic, add your custom logic, and you could do things like calling the original logic too. And this works with any logic. So that logic could be a state machine, a promise, observable, etc. So yeah, that's, I think, the most important change in XState V5, where we're really meeting developers where they're at. And of course, state machines did get a lot more powerful in XState V5. But if you want to represent things as promises, reducer functions, or even callbacks for anything else, and of course observables, then you could do it right in XState V5. So I'll pause there, or I'll just keep going on. There's so many exciting
there's so much to share.
Yeah. Another big one is the inspect API. So one of the things we did get rid of in XState V5 was attaching things like events and actions to the states, because we wanted to simplify the API and make it easier to compare changes between states. And so it never felt right that events belonged to the state. And now we have a more powerful inspect API, where you just pass an inspector, which is just an observer, and you could observe different inspection events, such as an actor when it's created, a snapshot when an actor's internal state changes, or an event when one actor tries to communicate with another actor. And so what's really cool about this is it enables some very powerful visualizations. I know that we had Stately Viz before, but we are actually moving a lot of that functionality over to the Stately Studio, including sequence diagrams. And hopefully we could pull that up. Otherwise, I could get that up somewhere.
You got an image somewhere?
I do. Give me 1 minute. Doing all of this live, so.
Oh, I can see it. Sorry, I've got it. Let me find this. Here we go.
Very suspenseful.
Yeah. There we go.
All right. So this is just a small preview, and this is actually something that is currently in development. Nick has been working on this, but essentially the XState Inspect API will allow you to actually inspect communication between actors and the state changes within an actor. So not shown over here, this is just a sequence diagram parts, but on the left-hand side, once we release this inspector, you will be able to see those state machines just like you would expect in Stately Viz, etc. And so the inspection API is different than the XState Viz. It will now be under Stately AI/inspect. And so the reason for that is because the API is flexible enough that it's not actually XState specific. So if you wanted to model these sequence diagrams in any application code, you're going to be able to. No XState required. But of course, XState is going to give you the richest amounts of information. But yeah, it is possible either in the front end or back end to automatically generate these sequence diagrams and do a lot more with this. So that is coming very soon, and I'm very excited for it because I think sequence diagrams are one of the best parts of UML. So yeah.
I've seen one of the previews of what Nick's been working on for the design of that, and it is looking really good.
Just to skim through some of the other stuff, we have deep persistence now, which means that when you persist the state of, or the snapshot of an actor, it will also recursively persist every single other invoked and spawned actor. So you could basically restore an entire system when, for example, you come back after a browser refresh, or you need to restore state of a complex workflow that might be invoking other workflows. And you could really customize that restoration logic there. Also, a big one, the ability to reference actors anywhere. So this was a huge problem in V4, where really only parents and child actor communication was made easy with send parent and send to child. But now you could register any actor as a globally available system ID, and then you could just like this, system ID notifier, and then in any other actor within the same system, you could get that actor and send events directly to it, just like that. So it reduces a massive amount of boilerplate. And also, this is going to look really nice on the sequence diagram too, because it makes it easier to model and visualize communication between actors without going through unnecessary layers of hierarchy. So that's an exciting change. Let's see what else. Just scrolling through here. Okay, this is another huge one. Stronger type inference. TypeScript was actually a huge pain, in my opinion, in version 4. As like we tried to do the best we could. We tried type gen, things like that, but still, with the shape of XState and the complexity of it, it's very, very hard to type. And so that's why recently we announced actually 2 new APIs. The first one is called the Setup API, which it just completely removes the boilerplates from setting up the types of your actors, actions, guards, and more. And it makes everything just very, very strongly typed. And I'll actually show a quick demo of that here. So I'm going to stop my screen and switch a screen. Eric said the only good part of UML. I believe that there's 2, maybe 3 sequence diagrams. There's, of course, state diagrams, and there's entity relationship diagrams too if you're modeling databases and things like that. Okay, so yeah, just to give you an idea of what the Setup API is, you could still create a machine like normal. So we could say machine equals create machine, and then thanks, Copilot. I just needed an example machine, and source, some source. And the problem over here is that in onDone, and hopefully this font size is big enough, I could always zoom in too.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So when we try to grab an event's output, you can see that this is actually typed as any, which isn't really that nice. And if we wanted to say, okay, for some source, it actually should be a specific type, then you had to add it to the types over here, or in version 4, you had to rely on typegen. But you know what? Let's make a sample source real quick, and this is to demonstrate another API. So const, let's actually call this fetch user equals from promise, and then whatever. I'm just going to return user David. So just a very, very simple promise. And so now, if we wanted to actually strongly type this within this machine, we could use the Setup API. So I'm going to call setup.createMachine. And in Setup, I just say, hey, fetch user is going to be one of my actors. That's all I have to do. So now in here, we get, if I type here, it auto-completes to fetch user. And also this event.output, if I type dot, now I have strong typing. This does not use any type gen at all. It just strongly types all of those actors for me, including the output data. And if I wanted to, I could say, hopefully this works, input, and this is user ID string. So now you could see that this is red because it's actually expecting that user input, although the error is pretty ugly. But if we put input, and let's just say user ID is 123, now it'll be happy at us. So we have a strongly typed user, strongly typed input, strongly typed output, and I hate to be that person, but that's not all. So I want to show you what else the Setup API enables. So if we have const actor equals create actor machine, thanks Copilot coming in clutch. Okay, we have a little bit of a type error, but that's okay. actor.gets. And so let's start that actor. And then our state is actor.getSnapshot. And so if we want to check if it matches something, so if state.matches, hopefully this works. Okay, we might be missing a little something over there. But in short, I promise you that in the latest version of XState V5, state.matches will be strongly typed. I'm just not sure what's...
Eric says, my red squiggly when I forgot to implement an action was on my interpret machine call. Can it be closer to the mistake in V5?
We typed in my red squiggly when I forgot was on my interpret. Yeah, so the setup API actually completely eliminates that, because if you decide to, for example, let's invoke source not implemented, then it's going to yell at you right here, because with the setup API, you don't have that source yet. So it's an immediate warning that, hey, you should probably add it here. So not implemented, you know, that could just be whatever. And then it shows that, because it requires an input. So yeah. Cool. So now it's happy. This isn't happy, it requires something, but you get the idea. So yeah, that's why we think that the setup API is a lot more powerful, because it does it forces you to really bring all of your implementations up front so that you know that you're not going to forget them. Now, of course, you could also do const other machine equals machine.provide, and then provide implementations to override that afterwards. So that's still possible.
Nice.
Hey, David, I was wondering, could you just mention a little bit about how the errors from the service will be handled? I know that there's been some recent developments there.
Oh yeah, so I mean they're handled as normal. So we would have on error, and then actions. You know, you have your event, and we have events.error now. This was changed recently from event.output. This is unknown, and it should be unknown because you cannot predict what an error is going to be. So yeah, that's available over there. And also, we've done a lot of work with errors so that the errors flow more seamlessly, so that they're captured in, for example, on error, or when you're subscribing to an actor. So const actor equals create actor machine. You could actually subscribe to those errors. So actor.subscribe error, and then you have that error over here. Just like that. And so this would be the normal way that you would listen to errors, because they can happen asynchronously. All right, I'm going to go back to my other screen, unless there were any questions.
No, just Eric saying he's so happy to bid farewell to TypeGen. We had many good times together. But
yeah.
via con Dios.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, ideally, it wasn't working in my VS Code, but I promise you it will work. When you use the setup API, the state values will be strongly typed inside of both your matches function and also the state.value function. And that was a huge change, because before it was just a state value. It could have been anything. But as a developer, if you're specifying these states, you want them to autocomplete and be strongly typed in places like matches and state value. So they will be. All right, breezing through this because we have a lot to go through. Dynamic parameters. Speaking of getting rid of type gen, like Eric said, dynamic parameters allow you to say, hey, I want to call this action with these parameters that might come from context or the event, and then you could pass them in directly into the assign or the guard object. And that means that you don't have to worry about context or the events or anything like that when you actually implement your actions in guards. And that means they could be used absolutely anywhere. You could reuse them with different machines. You could individually test them without pulling your hair out, figuring out the types, because all you have to do is define the parameter types directly in the function like this, and everything will be strongly typed. So that's a change that Mateusz made that I'm very, very happy about. All right, one more big one, on queue actions. This was actually create action before, which wasn't really an accurate name. We like to be explicit, so it's called on queue actions. This is a replacement for both peer and choose. And this allows you to avoid the awkwardness of creating an array of actions, or the awkwardness of having that array of objects with choose and guard and things like that, because you could just write normal JavaScript or TypeScript, depending on what you're doing. And it actually makes it easier to execute certain actions like assign and send to. Long story short, when you call onQueue, it's going to basically put that in an internal array so that when this action returns, it is basically a composition of all of the actions that you've onQueued. And we also have check, type some guard. And so that way you could use predefined guards directly in your action function. So you could use if statements, for loops, whatever you want in here, and you don't return anything. This is meant to be pure, but we changed the name from pure to onQueue actions. But it is a much more natural way of defining more complex actions. Okay, so going on through here, self-reference. This is actually a small but very, very powerful pattern. The self-reference to the actor that's invoked by the machine is now available, and you could just pass it like normal to events or store it in context or whatever you want with it. In fact, I didn't put it here or in the docs because it might not be the most encouraged, but if you really wanted to have an async action, which a lot of developers were asking about, then what you could do is use self, call your fire and forget action, which might be async, and then send an event back just by calling self.send. And then that will just work as expected. There's also higher order guards, which is pretty cool because now you could define more complex guard logic with and, not, and or to just to combine multiple named guards and things like that. Partial event descriptors are also cool too. So you could say if you have pointer.down, pointer.up, pointer.move, and you want to say I want to do something when any of those events happen, you could just put pointer.star. And the wild thing about this is actually completely type safe too. If you define all of these events, then you can autocomplete pointer.star, and it will. We did a bunch of TypeScript magic in order to make that work, but it is exciting that works. And it will be the combination of all of those events types too. All right, so that's just a few of the features. Of course, with 4 years of changes, there's so many features, and I don't want to take up all the time here. So yeah, just wanted to mention that there, of course, are some migrations and breaking changes, but I've had to migrate a ton of version 4 machines over to version 5, and it's really not that bad. Really, the only big change you will have to make for most of your machines is what's called a unified argument. So instead of passing context as the first arg, events as the second arg, and anything else as a third arg, that's all just in one argument. So you just wrap this in curly braces, and as long as they're named context and events, you're good to go. Also, cond has changed to guard, and most of the other big changes are around the way that you invoke and spawn and create different types of actor logic. And of course, finally, we are releasing Stately Studio support for V5 now that we've solidified the XState V5 API. We were waiting on that. There was a lot of moving parts, and we didn't want to write anything in stone before releasing XState V5. But now we can accelerate the support of those features in the studio. And just as a reminder, if you go to state.new, actually, let's go to some of our projects, maybe not weirdness. Let's go to a new project over here. All right, this is a fun one. So if you look at the code, we already have this toggle for XState V5 beta which will give you XState V5 compatible code. And so now basically the only change we have to make is get rid of this beta, and your machines should be able to work with with XState V5. So that is already supported. You could already import XState V5 machines. There's a few more tweaks that we have to make and a few more features we have to add to the studio, such as support for input and output and things like that, like our higher order guards. But that all is going to come pretty soon. And the number one thing we're working on right now is getting the visualizer and inspector directly into Stately Studio, so you could take advantage of that with your XState V5 machines. Cedric asked about the type gen. Like I mentioned earlier, type gen is pretty much no longer necessary. There might be a few cases where type gen in V4 enabled some things that type gen or that V5 typing doesn't. But we're working hard to cover those use cases and provide alternatives for that. And we might still provide some support for type gen. That still remains to be seen. But our goal is to just get you to using XState V5 and not having to worry about installing anything else. So yeah.
Eric says there, V5 reeks of Anderist. What a hire. Of course.
Yes, he is all over this XState V5 and also all over TypeScript. There were some important TypeScript changes that needed to be made and some PRs that Anderist has made himself to TypeScript that we were basically just waiting to be merged in to enable some very cool features in XState. And they were recently merged in November. So that's what allowed us to do a lot of TypeScript magic over here. And also, if you are new to Stately Studio, we have a promotion code, XState V5, and this gets you 35% off of a new Stately Pro subscription, which you have a 1-week trial, so you could try it out if you want. And this is valid up till the end of December, so up until 2024. We have a lot of future plans and ideas, and we want to hear your ideas as well. So please let us know what you think of XState version 5 and what you're looking forward to seeing in the future.
You can do that at feedback.stately.ai. And yeah, just a word on Pro. If you try out Stately Studio Pro, you can end up with features like having a version history, like being able to have colors, being able to export to other more interesting formats as well. Not to mention all of the recent Stately AI and Stately Sky features. So you can deploy your actors live as workflows. You can also generate your apps, generate React apps, as you can see, and enhance the UIs of your Stay machines in order to make actual React apps. So there is a huge amount of features now in Stately Pro. So if you haven't tried it out yet, I would really recommend you do so.
Yep, lots of exciting features. And
just jumping back a moment. So we touched briefly on what would be required for migration, but Faris asks, it would be great if you could support a gradual migration so that we can migrate one machine at a time. It could be that we import from V5 and then import create machine from XState V5, for example. Now, is that possible to migrate sort of slowly in that way?
Absolutely. And actually, this is made easy by the fact that XState has 0 dependencies. It's not doing anything in pure or global. It is just a standalone library. So actually, let me try to pull something up. But you should be able to do an npm alias of yeah, you should be able to. So I think the way it works here, let me just pull up my screen real quick. Not this one.
A little bit of experimental code going on.
Exactly. But yeah, this is already a known technique in not XState, but npm. So let me just, where is my code window? Huh.
So this is what happens at the end of a week when you've been working on a release. You've got too many windows open, it's impossible to find the right one. I know that feeling.
Anyway, what you could do, and I'm just using a sample package.json here for demonstration, but you could, for example, let's say that you need to install XState and you want to stay at 4. So you might say this is, 4, just like this. And what I would do personally is type XState 5, and then you could put npm :xstate, and this is going to be at latest, or you could specify at 5.0.0, and then you could use XState 5, and also you could do the same for React and things like that. But yeah, it is possible. We are doing it in our own code base. We're using both XState version 4 and XState version 5 to do gradual migration of individual machines.
Fabulous. I just scrolling past the when can we expect V6. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, too right. And Cedric says that Andreas works so much that we don't see him in the office hours. Yeah, he is always working incredibly hard on all things open source. And yeah, I hope he's. We summoned him. We summoned him. It's some sort of magic. You mention his name 3 times in the comments and he appears.
That's amazing.
The same trick as with David and state machines.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I'd said the word open source enough, and that's probably what finally did it.
Oh, here we go. Okay, cool. So now you can see over here. Let me just show this real quick, just because I'm very excited for this. In our state machine, we do have 3 states: idle, waiting, and received. And you could see when we hover over value, we get those 3 state values. So
Nice.
we could say equals, too many equals, and then we have those states ready to be auto-completed. So even if we do something like a nested state, so initial foo states foo bar, so we could do whatever. Let me see if matches works now. There we go. So I could say waiting, and then this should give me foo. Well, Copilot gives me foo. So
yeah, it's a top level key, so it's only a string, not an object. Like
well, we have a nested state over here.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll double check that. But otherwise, you do have your autocomplete for that. So we have idle, received, and waiting.
So, Mateusz, Andreas, Plumber, what's the part of XState version 5 that you're most excited about, or most pleased that we managed to get in?
That's a hard question. I honestly kind of know. I think like I'm mostly perhaps happy about like smaller things that we managed to fix up. Maybe not smaller ones, but rather like maybe the ones that are not as exciting usually. So like for the improved error propagation, and in general like how errors are handled right now. Also the fact that we managed to fix a lot of things around like spawning initial actors, keeping the state pure, and execution of actions more like predictable. Yeah, those are probably exciting to me, because those are like cleanups that I just like wanted to do for a very long time.
A big experience, big improvements to the developer experience, isn't it?
That there is a lot of the type work that went into that, so that's my blood and tears in the final product.
I think anyone working with TypeScript will be raising a beer to you as soon as they start getting into version 5.
Yep. All right, so it was my mistake. I was putting that in the invoke object. So yeah, that completely works now. We have full matching for idle, received, waiting, and for properties inside of there. So yeah, that all works.
Fabulous. If anyone has any questions that they want to ask us about XState V5 or anything else, please let us know in the comments. Or if something comes to you in the future, you can always join us on our Discord, and our Discord is at discord.stately.ai, and you'll find that most of the team are in there all the time. So John asks, is Raise type safe now? Was running into having to TS ignore that with the type gen?
Yeah, race should be safe. So let's say that we just have some event types here. So our events might be as type go to waiting. I'm just gonna let Copilot do its thing. By the way, if you're using Copilot, it's like a cheat code for XState, because Copilot understands XState really well. It understands your entire machine definition. So basically all you have to do is wait for Copilot to autocomplete these types, and it's pretty magical. So if we wanted to raise an event in here, for example, entry, we could just raise type, and then there we go. We have go to waiting or resolve completely type safe.
Joseph says, I'm smashing a bottle of champagne into my MacBook. Congratulations, everyone.
I want to do that too.
Yeah, I feel like you certainly have earned it. So we're going to have a webinar on XState V5 at exactly the same time as this office hours was, but Friday next week. If you do want to learn more about XState V5 or want to jump into XState for the first time, now is the perfect time to do that. John asks, will it be safe if it's passed as a second parameter to create machine?
Second parameter raise. Okay, yeah. So let's say that we have some sort of action over here. So actions do something, and then that's just an empty string. And so let's say that you want to provide actions do something, and you want to actually raise from there. Type. There we go. Yes, still type safe.
Yay. Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, we
Is there
focused
anything
a
that
lot
we've
on type
missed?
safety.
Oh, we've got a huge, there's so many things in V5.
Yeah. I don't think so, but yeah, we are having that free webinar next week. But if your company wants help migrating from XState V4 to V5, or better yet, if you want a full day workshop on taking advantage of the XState V5 APIs and just how to use the actor model in State Machine to model your complex application logic using the actor model, State Machine, state charts, and more, then please contact us, because we would be more than happy to deliver those webinars, workshops, or whatever else you want.
Absolutely. I was just looking to see if we had any questions, but it's Eric. Can we use Roman numerals and call it VV? Honestly. So yeah, make sure you join us for the webinar. David, could you remind us, what is the code that folks need to use if they want to get that 35% off Stately Studio Pro?
Oh, the code is pretty easy to remember. It is XState V5. So use this code if you want to get 35% off a new Stately Studio Pro subscription.
And if anyone heard that, that was not me groaning. It was my dog's excitement about being able to get 35% off.
And this will only last until the end of December.
Yeah, so make sure you get in there. There are so many new features. If you ever want to find out about all of the new features that we've got released, you can check them out on our blog. We've also been posting a lot of little video clips lately on our socials, so you can find out more about how things work from there. I mean, you can go from generating a state machine just using a text description to having a React prototype up and running in probably 2 minutes, and you don't have to write any code. But of course, V5 is here for when you start wanting to implement that.
Of course.
Right. Is there anything else that we wanted to cover this week? I think we've blown everyone's minds.
No, I think our next big announcement will be the new inspector that's going to be available in the studio, and a bunch of other things that Farzad and Kevin are working on for editing things like guards, actions, and actors inline inside of the studio. So you could use plain code for that. And you could even use AI to generate those implementations.
So there's so much more coming as well. We're not slowing down at all. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We hope that you will join us next week for the V5 webinar. It will be at exactly the same time as this office hours, but next Friday. I will make sure I get that scheduled very soon so that you will be able to subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on LinkedIn so you can be first to be notified about that event and get reminders about them when they come. Oh, we have even more questions going on here, so let's not miss them. John says, will there be a focus on in-editor developer experience? I think this will help promote it a lot.
Yeah, and maybe Mateusz could answer that better. We have been talking about things like ESLint plugins. Of course, we've been working on the TypeScript experience, so you get that better developer experience out of the box. And we're still working on updating the VS Code extension to bring you up to speed with V5 and more features that are only available in the Studio web version right now.
Yeah, yeah. In general, that's kind of what I would like to focus on next, like in combination with the XState V5 ongoing work, because the product is never done. But yeah, like the in editor developer experience, like the extension, Visual Studio Code, and in other IDEs if possible. That's kind of my jam. So I'd like to just re-architect that and bring it to the next level.
Yes, Eric says VS Code extension is a blocker on V5 for me, so I'm used to it. This is a great question from, and I'm sorry, I don't know if you're a Georgia or Jorge, but if I want to start with XState, where can I start?
Great question. So we have a bunch of published webinars on actually we did one recently with getting started with XState V5. So we did one previously where it was a migration guide from V4 to V5, but I think that would be a good place to start. But also, the documentation has been completely rewritten from scratch to really help you get up and running with XState and gently guide you through all of the concepts so that you could make that smooth transition from not knowing XState or state machines to being productive with it.
And we've got even more updates that are just sitting there, just about to be released to those docs too. So if there's something that you feel like is missing, let us know, but otherwise be sure that it is on its way. Thank you, Oscar. Is there anything else that we wanted to cover? I think we have covered it all. JetBrains, Kyle asks, how about JetBrains?
This has been a big request. We've been talking about adding supports for things like WebStorm, PyCharm, and of course, updating the VS Code experience. And yeah, so that is something that we're going to be talking about more in 2024. But one thing that we are working on releasing soon is a GitHub sync extension. And so this is going to allow you to work either in the Studio web, so you could go to stately.ai/editor and work from there, or in the comforts of your own IDE, so that you could still visualize the same machines that you're working on in your GitHub and in the future other Git provider repos. So yeah, this has been a big request, and we will, we'll talk about more next year.
And if you do have any features to request, or if you want to upvote existing requests, like for JetBrains, you can do that at feedback.stately.ai. We have a roadmap kind of thing going on there, as well as a board where you can post what you want and also upvote on the other features. And we do pay a lot of attention to that when we're prioritizing what we're working on next. Oh, I see. Eric says, remember that GitHub bot that used to post state charts as comments in PRs? That was cool. That's another feature that is on the feature requests board as well. And we definitely think that's cool as well. That would be a really cool feature in the future.
Of course, we'll bring it back.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us this week. We hope you're as excited about XState version 5 as the rest of us are. You can find the repo for that at github.com/stately.ai/xstate. I'm just seeing if I've got a specific banner for that. I don't, but it's on GitHub. You know where to find it. And you can read David's blog post that goes into all of the details about the latest release on our blog, which is at stately.ai/blog. We hope to see you again next week. Thank you, everyone who joined us live in the comments and asked your questions. We really appreciate you being here and giving us lots more to talk about. We will see you all soon. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.